So that at least we know what's going on there. Okay, folks, welcome. Call the meeting to order, and we'll get right to business. First item is the approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. North Arundel project financing. Joe?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Just to give you a brief overview of tonight's topics. We will talk to you about North Arundel widening. We are approaching a decision point on when and how to move forward on that project. You'll also receive tonight an update on a scaled-back version of the tree lighting festival. And then the two remaining items are the two items that the board pulled off of consent of the regular meeting and wanted to move forward for further discussion at the work session. So the first item to talk about is North Arundel Avenue, the financing of that particular project. Just as a reminder, this project was or is one that will design the Pierce's Road approach to Arundel to have dual Fs, as well as to add in an additional lane on North Arundel, just north of the intersection with Pierce's, and then continue the 2 lanes down to the US 64 ramp. So that's a brief overview of the project. Back in 2015, the town of Zebulon applied for what is called a LAP grant for a project total of close to $1.2 million. While that seems like a lot of money, the project is ultimately underscoped, and it was underscoped for several reasons. There was market changes that were afoot. When this project was first budgeted, it was on the heels of the Great Recession. The building market, the contractors in particular, were very competitive, and then the market rebounded. They were looking to make up for lost revenue from years of doing without, but also more specifically, regionally, the market was heating up, and they had a lot of projects available to them, so they could command higher bid prices for their work. So the market changed considerably. And so the budget of $1.2 million was not going to meet the market conditions. And there was other changes afoot, and I'll get into greater detail in later slides on this, but the level of detail that was the basis of that grant was not of sufficient detail to really come up with an adequate scope of work. But there was also changes to the scope of work from NCDOT after the project had been submitted. And then finally, as we'll share, the project is underscoped to really solve the bigger problem that is afoot. And we'll talk to you because that relates to one of the options that we're going to put before you for consideration. So as far as the level of detail, the project budget was based upon this plan that was included in your transportation plan, not this one that you just approved, but the one before that. And this level of detail is called a functional plan. It's probably, if it's not the lowest, it's the second to lowest level of detail for a project. The fact that this level of detail was included in a transportation plan was a little unusual. I think it was a reflection of the fact that there was symptoms, and so this was a project that was trying to address the traffic symptoms. But nonetheless, it was a plan that was included in the transportation plan. It was the basis for the budget that was put forth for the LAP grant application. As I mentioned, this is probably, if it's not the lowest, it's the second to lowest level of detail. And with that comes some things that just don't get picked up until you start getting into preliminary plans. The best example of this is right in this area that is highlighted in the circle. That's the property that fronts the vet, and there's a parish property in there as well. When a functional plan is developed, it will do things like show the amount of asphalt, the amount of concrete, the fact that there's a curb and gutter going across this driveway. But it doesn't get into the level of detail that, A, this is actually not going to be a driveway, it's going to be shut off. And so as a result, you're shutting off this property here, and so the scope of work really should have included an access road. Come down Hendricks, come behind that property to connect with this property here so it has access to Arundel. Probably the bigger impact, however, is the fact that this property right here was utilizing the right-of-way for parking. Now, they're not permitted for parking, but they've been doing it for years, and that was a function of their business. And so as a result of that, when you take away something that they had become used to in the operation of their business, that's called adverse possession, and you have to pay for the disruption of that. So not only was this back road not included in the scope, the amount of the right-of-way acquisition, which is substantially more when you're shutting off not only access to the property, but also parking to the property, made the right-of-way estimate considerably higher.
So let me interrupt you. When did that back road come out? Because I recall it being in there at one point.
I don't know when the back road was put in, at what point. So I can't answer that.
Well, and it may be irrelevant, but my recall is that somewhere in the past, there was a back road that was coming down there. And I personally didn't realize it had been taken out, but just a curiosity question, how that came about.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that it was taken out or it wasn't shown until later.
Yeah, maybe, but anyway, I know that at one point, there was consideration for that to be done.
Yeah, well, it's included now, but I don't know when it got included.
Okay.
The other thing that occurred, there was changes to the scope, and this came from DOT. So if you look I've got it highlighted. That intersection, DOT is not going to allow a signalized intersection so close to an existing signalized intersection. And so removing that signalized intersection prevents a lot of cross movements in this intersection. It restricts what we call right-in and right-out movements. And so when you restrict the movements that can come in and out of these side streets for the eastern section, it means you have to install a road. So the Jones Street extension is something that had to get added to complete and tie into, that came in behind was Hillbillies, and then that vacant property right next to Dogwood to connect to Dogwood. So there were some scope changes as well that were different than what's in this functional plan. Any questions before I move on? Okay. The next thing is the project really doesn't resolve, the project doesn't resolve the problem that is occurring. So let me back up one. This project, primarily the emphasis was to take care of all this traffic that was coming down Pierce's. And there was a lot of traffic based upon subdivisions within the county. We've added a subdivision that will come online called Pierce's Landing, but it really wasn't necessarily focused on the amount of traffic that was coming down this way. That has subsequently changed. So this is an aerial photo of Pippin Road and North Arundel, and this is Glory Road right here. One of the things that you've heard from staff in the latest transportation and land use plan is transportation and land use have to be coordinated with each other. We have used an analogy such as if you build a mansion, but you have the plumbing system or the electrical system for a garage, the mansion is not livable. And so the last transportation plan that you had was not coordinated with a land use plan. So one of the things that occurred is when this property right here, when it was a farm, this transportation system worked quite well. This served as a farm to market road. You had a farmer, came in, primarily had one trip in mind, which was to get to town or to get to some sort of distribution center. Could have been a depot, could have been a warehouse, even if the warehouse was here or Wendell or Wilson. When that land changed and became a subdivision of single-family houses, that road was no longer adequate in its width, but no longer adequate in its alignment. We still have that skewed alignment, and even though there's a signal there, it operates inefficiently because this skewed alignment can only pass so many cars through that intersection. Ideally, if the transportation plan had been coordinated with the land use plan, we would have seen a transportation plan that would have extended Pippin Road, tied it into Glory Road, and so the traffic that was coming out of Weaver's Pond could access US 64 via Lizard Lick and come down and access 64 by Lizard Lick. This option is lost to us now. There's a school there, but it reveals that we need to think of the North Arundel project in maybe different terms, that we have traffic not only coming down Pierce's, but we also have a lot of traffic coming down Arundel. And there's only so much we can do at that intersection to move that amount of traffic. We're gonna have to consider approaching that project more holistically to think of ways to distribute all the traffic that's coming to a single point. So save that thought, because that will factor into one of the options that we put before you for consideration.
Let me ask you another question on that. You're saying that you would jump on the Glory Road to get to Lizard Lip?
I'm saying without that, there's no place for the traffic to go but Arundel. And so Arundel,
I understand that. My question is that upper intersection, because they're gonna have to turn on 96 there because Glory Road is closed when you get on down there. And
think
it
it's-
would go through the reservoir whenever that's built.
I'll have to look at the map again. I mean, I'll defer to your judgment. You've been here much longer. But the theory anyway is that it connects with, it ultimately gets to 64. I thought Glory connected with Lizard Lick.
It used to.
Yeah.
It doesn't anymore. In fact, that bridge down in the bottom is closed,
Okay,
where you go across Little River.
okay.
But also, that goes through the, where the Little River Reservoir would be. Actually, both roads, that one and Riley Hill Road, both go through, so there's gonna have to be another way to do it. I just thought I'd point that out. The Glory Road is not open all the way through.
Okay, I appreciate that. The fact remains that you got a lot of traffic coming into a single point.
I don't argue that, but I just wanted to be sure you understood.
Yep, thank you.
I've coon hunted in that bottom down there, so I know.
I figured you did. All right, so as far as a project check-in, when we came to the realization of all the things that you have just shared with, we came before the board, I want to say it was 3 years ago, so I'm thinking it was around 2018. We checked in with the board to let them know that because of the basis of the project, the changes in market condition, the changes to the scope, that this project was going to exceed the 1.2 million that had been budgeted. And so the consensus of the board at the time was that the improvements were still needed. And between then and now, there would be the opportunity to access other funds. So examples of that would be additional funding from Campo. Campo has agreed, as they've done with other projects that are seeing these overruns that are generated primarily by the market, that anything above and beyond the original grant amount that they'll match 50-50. So it's not an 80-20 split, but anything above and beyond is a 50-50. There would be the chance to get some funds directly from NCDOT. Staff has been successful in getting a pledge to get about $150,000 pledged, and that would be for this southernmost portion around the ramp area. DOT had done some recent paving. They realized that with our project coming in, there was no reason to pave it and then for us to come afterwards. So they have agreed in principle to divert some funds that were going to be used for that paving project to this project. So we were successful in getting that pledge. The mayor has also been successful. He approached, this has been a few years now, but approached the Board of Transportation. Each board member of the Board of Transportation has some discretionary funds called spot safety funds. And so we've got a pledge of another $200,000 there. Back then, we were just starting to get more serious and dedicated about our transportation impact fees, so there was the expectation that we would be getting fees coming in from all the development that was coming online. And then there was the expectation that development along the corridor itself would come online, and they would have to not only pay transportation impact fees, but they would make improvements along this corridor. And then when the day came, the board, in this case you, could have a discussion about whether to use general fund balance to increase taxes. And just as a budget side note, the only time you can raise taxes is one time a year when you adopt the budget, so you can't do a mid-year tax increase. Or to increase taxes through a bond referendum. So a bond referendum is really just a vote on a tax increase. So there was a bunch of options. There was a few years left to do some of the things that needed to be done before the plans were completed. The plans have been completed now. And before easement acquisition was completed. We are almost complete with easement acquisition, and that has placed us at our decision point that we're starting the discussion with you more formally tonight.
Can we use ARP funds for this?
We can look into that. I would doubt that, but we can look into it. So the options we're going to put before you, not saying that these are all the options, but these are the options that that we think are your options. So we're going to talk a little bit more detail about these four. First is just proceed with the project as currently scoped. So this project is going to cost more than the 1.2 million. And so if you move forward, you will have to come up with, or we will have to come up with the 50% cost share for anything above and beyond that 1.2. Option two, and I'm going to go into details about this in future slides. Option two is to reduce the scope of the project. So really the crux of the issue right now is to improve the intersection of Pierce's Road and Arundel, just in that intersection. Third option is take the project you've got, release the LAP grant funds, reapply for the LAP grant funds with the hope that they will cover 80% of what is the new and revised budget. And four is to consider a much bigger project that addresses some of the other issues that we've talked about. So as far as option one, which I'm calling the proceed option, project status is, as I mentioned, the design is complete. We've purchased almost all of the properties. There's 6 easements outstanding. While there's 6 easements outstanding, there are really 2 property owners. One is this at the corner of Hendricks and Arundel. Our hope and our plan was that when this property redevelops, that they would dedicate that easement as well as improve the roadway frontage in front of that property. The other is this combination of properties further north. We had hopes that that would redevelop. I think because we're seeing no activity on redevelopment on either one of those properties, I think the idea that those are going to redevelop is not realistic in the short term. So if you're interested in option one, then we need to have a discussion with you about A, dedication of funds to complete the easement acquisition, as well as dedication of funds to move forward with construction. I'll pause there before I go to option two. We're not looking for a decision tonight. Work sessions are meant to get you informed, but I will stop to see if there's any questions.
Where are the price tags on this? Are they further in there?
I did not put it in there, but I would tell you what we are thinking is this will be an additional $2.5 million to move forward.
Total, so half would be,
That's our half,
that's our half.
yes.
So the total project has gone to over 5 million.
That's what we think. We've put in quite a few inflation factors. And at the end of the day, you don't know until you bid the project. But
Sure.
that's what we're basing on.
Okay.
Option two is the rescope, where you focus just on this intersection improvement. We would need to get some feedback from DOT on what they would allow us to do. Ideally, I would love just to put in the dual lefts coming off of Pierce's, feeding into 2 lanes along Arundel, and maybe the increase of 2 lanes just north of the intersection, and not close the opening to this existing business. I think the reality is that they would require us to close that off because that's an operational problem. So when that happens, that keeps the right-of-way cost in there, as well as the inclusion of this back road. I think you would get some savings because you would not have to put in the median. But when you do that, then we miss out on the opportunity to participate in the LAP grant. The LAP grant, one of its fundamental reasons for existing is to take care of traffic accidents, more so than congestion. And so one of the benefits of putting in this median is you cut off this cross traffic that comes from these side uses, and you send them to these back roads to access the properties from those side roads. So this is an unknown. If this happens like we think it's going to happen, which is DOT would make us close this off, we would still have the increased right of way. We would have to put in this back road, and the LAP grant criteria would no longer be met. Probably the minimum reduction of scope and the loss of LAP grant, you're probably looking at that around that $2.5 million as well.
For the total or for our share?
Well, in this case, it's going to be completely us, because we won't get any funds from LAP grant. If we
We
go
won't
with
get
something,
anything from Campo or any of those other ones?
that's exactly right.
Okay.
So the 2.5 is the total cost projected on this one?
Yep.
Okay.
That's not including the pledges.
We would have to go back and, I mean, I don't mean for this to sound trivial. We're appreciative of 150,000, we're appreciative of 200,000, but on a multi-million-dollar project, it's not going to make a big difference. But the point is well taken. We would have to go back and make sure that those that pledged those amounts would still be willing to stand behind those pledges, because those pledges were based that we were going to be doing the bigger project. Other questions? Okay. Option 3 is the resubmit. Give back the LAP grant funds, resubmit next year with the current project as is scoped, recognizing that for a whole host of reasons, the LAP grant budget was under budgeted, so we're coming back with a more realistic budget. We would love to get the 80-20% match on the more realistic budget. The downsides are you don't know if this project is going to be competitive with all the other projects that are going on in the region. Back in 2015, this was a competitive project. The way this region is growing, I don't know if it is as much of a need as we're seeing in other towns in the Campo region. Potentially to make it more competitive, Campo may request that you contribute more money. So whereas you've got an 80-20 match on the existing project, they may come back and want to see something like a 70-30. And that's just an example. But that's option 3. Questions or comments?
Timing on resubmittal decisions.
Yeah, you would resubmit next September. You would get word the following February, maybe March. Funds would be available that October, that September, October. So 2 years away from funds being available.
So October of 2023?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, option 4. So I mentioned about all this traffic coming into a single point here, and that being a big expectation of one single intersection. So what we're putting before you is the notion of means to distribute the traffic a little bit more. So as an example, with this project, which would be the inclusion of a roundabout at Pierce's and Proctor, as well as your signalized intersections at Green Pace and Arundel, and Shepherd School and Old Bun, that traffic coming down Pierce's, they would have the option of continuing and coming through Arundel, or they could come over here and come down Green Pace and ultimately access US 64 out of Wendell. They could also come through here, and this would be the completion of Jones Street to Jones Street, meaning not just the part behind Hillbillies and Dogwood, but the completion and connection by the church and through to Proctor Street. So given some options for this traffic coming down Arundel to go through the existing Pierce's Arundel, or come through Green Pace in Arundel, or come through Jones to Dogwood and come to the intersection of Dogwood and Arundel at the US 64 ramps. As far as the traffic coming down Arundel, again, options could be to continue to move straight or to take a right through this improved intersection and again access US 64 through Wendell. One of the things that could be beneficial to us is the LAP grant requires a portion of the towns to match. You already have this project budgeted for construction and this project budgeted for construction. Through the Northeast Area Study, this might be a project where we could get some additional criteria, meaning that it would bump up our score. So the idea being that if we resubmitted with a rescoped project, we would look into getting the budgeted funds for this project and this project counted as our proportional share, with the hope that this intersection, as well as this entire corridor, which was noted in the Northeast Area Study for its high accident rate, that might also bump up our points to get it funded. So that would be the theory.
Oh,
Yeah, so we've got cost estimates for this and this. Is that what you were asking?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the budget. I want to say this was 250 in this upcoming budget and 250 for there.
But
and
you're
that's the
saying,
signalization.
Yeah, what we could do is pull money off of that and put it back
Yeah, that was,
into north of Rendell, which I realize those need attention, so I don't want to detract from that, but if we're looking money, that's one place we could get it. That'd be $500,000 we could pull.
Excuse me, Shannon, you had a question?
so the traffic circle would just be at Proctor and Pierce's still with this? And if we upscope this and resubmit it, what is the time frame that we're looking at?
It would be
that?
it would be the same time frame that would be for option 3.
So
You would-
2023 of October?
Yeah, you would resubmit in September, October of next year. You would get the money the following October. And unlike option 3, you would need that time to do some design work here anyway, whereas option 3, you're just kind of hanging tight.
How much design work, I mean, we currently do have design work already in progress for these portions.
We do.
And so the design work would be mostly to take care of the Pierces and Proctor?
Yep, yes, and maybe and there would be some, I mean, it's comparatively minor, it's not insignificant though, but to also complete Jones Street coming off of Proctor. There's a gap between Proctor and the church right now that goes past like 5 houses. It's,
But this would still take into
it's-
account North Arundel,
It's right there.
the North Arundel widening?
I'm sorry.
This would still tackle the North Arundel widening? Or that wouldn't be part of the?
Oh, no, that would be the base, and then these other areas that are shaded would be added to that.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
is there any way of knowing what the traffic impact will be as far as the build out on the residentials along Old Bun will be in the next couple of years?
I mean, we can give you, I'm trying to understand the question. We can give you what what traffic will be generated by those intersections. I think your question is what kind of improvements need to be made at the intersections?
The build out in the next couple of years, how would that affect the traffic, the amount of traffic from those build outs?
Okay. If you look at the other, as those subdivisions build out, so we'll have to widen Old Bun, we'll have to increase those intersections, but we need to add more roads as well. So these improvements, while they're necessary, they're not going to be the ultimate fix. We just need to have a more robust transportation system. We got to introduce more roads to distribute the traffic.
But a lot of Old Bun, well, I say a lot, but a substantial amount, I would think, would go out to 97 to come around and pick up on 264 if they're going to go to Raleigh rather than having to go through and fight Wakefield. And then some of them would use that to get into town as well, as opposed to coming around the other way.
That will happen. When water pressure gets sufficient for from the city of Raleigh, the rest of the land that's north of Weaver's Pond, north of Autumn Lakes, north of Barrington, that will add more traffic than Old Bun, regardless of which way people go. And at that point, we'll need to be adding those future roads to come in there. Other questions?
Yeah, so these are some emergent traffic issues that we've been talking about for a while.
Right.
And if we rescope and resubmit, can we still start moving on these, or are we going to have to wait for that resubmittal to be accepted?
That's something we'll have to coordinate and find out with Campo what.
And if we get too far out there, we could be out on a limb with no help at all.
Right, right.
So then we're right in the middle of it with a full burden. Proceed with caution.
Right.
Or we don't have to go the full bite. We can go back and downscope the project and maybe later on come back and try again. Now it's going to be harder because we've already done part of it. But
Larry?
Any estimates when the signal goes in on green pace, how much traffic we may be able to divert with just that light? Were there any traffic studies done there? Clearly, some people will take green pace, but I'm just wondering.
We'll have to come back to you on that. I wouldn't even hazard a guess on that.
Larry, was your question, what can we do if we go with the rescope to divert traffic and deal with traffic situations until that 2-year ground break would happen?
Well, the question really is, once that signal goes in on green pace, how much traffic we may actually start diverting over to Lizard Lick, away from our choke point in Arundel.
Okay.
Because I think some of the new people moving here don't even understand some of the shortcuts or back roads. As someone who moved here, it took me a couple years to really figure out all the little shortcuts around town that until I was forced to do it, I didn't even know I could go somewhere in another direction. You kind of get into a routine. And maybe we even need some signs up there to educate people. The arrow, you can get to 64 this way.
Yeah.
So let me add a couple of things now that I understand where you're coming from. 2 things. Signalization will divert more traffic to green pace. I can't quantify that yet, but the reason it will is it's not so much the traffic coming down Arundel and taking a right on green pace. That's just a matter of them being educated to do that, and signage will help. And we would have to promote it a lot as well as put signage. The key where the signal helps is when people return. People and when they travel are very much creatures of habit. So if this is the way they went to work, this is the way they expect to come back. And putting a signal there will greatly facilitate taking a left coming back home. And so a signal will help because it will reinforce that this is a direction you can go to work and come back home. We will need to sign it. We will have to promote it, market it, but I can't quantify what kind of difference that would make. Other questions or comments? All right, summary again. This is what we think are your options. Again, proceed with the project as it's currently scoped, reduce the scope of the project, resubmit the project as currently scoped, resubmit project with a bigger scope of work. As with all work sessions, we're looking to arm you with information. You're the decision makers. Our job is to make you the subject matter experts so you can make an informed decision. So before, and this won't be the only time we talk about this, but what additional information do you need? Do you have a preferred or non-preferred option? And what do you need to know to have a preferred or non-preferred option? The biggest thing that's going to be your decision point, and will come before you at your October regular meeting for some direction, is we need to answer the question on if we're going to continue with option one. If we continue with option one, as I mentioned, where we have gone really as far as we can with easement acquisition, and so we'll need to get additional funds if we're going to move, if we're going to continue to entertain the idea of option one. And then I'll just open the floor to any other questions that you may have.
Joe, what I would like to see is each of these options, and I know that on the rescoping, you can't give those figures yet, but the ones that you can give the figures on, a complete breakdown of where the money is coming from. This much from the town, this much from LAP, this much from DOT, this much from spot money, so that we really understand that. And I know you went through it, but it's not written down in front of me where I can really look at it. And I think that would be very helpful, at least for me it would, and perhaps for the others as well.
What, absolutely. What else?
And also, I think what Commissioner Baxter said, the possibility of those rescue funds, American Rescue Fund. You did, that is what you asked me.
Okay.
And can we find out what the rubric is as far as the point system through Campo, so that we have an idea if, for the rescope, what exactly we can add or doesn't need to be added for us to get the maximum number of points, so that we have a greater chance of getting our project approved and getting those grant monies.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Other questions? All right.
Is that it? Everybody, questions? All? Okay, we'll move on to tree lighting options.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Thank you for having me here this evening. We came before you last month and talked about whether or not we would move forward with a full-scoped tree lighting event. And the decision at that time was not to move forward with that full scale event and to consider alternative options for scaled down. So in order for us to do that, our department really took a look at what is the purpose of this tree lighting event, and how, if we do rescope it, that we don't lose sight of what that is. So some of the purpose of the tree lighting event is to bring our community together during the holidays. It was also to work with our nonprofit partners and bring our civic groups together, as well as highlight our downtown businesses. So in looking at some scaled back options, our department, we continue to have that concern of confusing our community by offering a scaled back Christmas tree lighting event. And so we are proposing to break it up into two things. And one being that pre-recorded virtual tree lighting that's launched on the typical day of the Christmas tree lighting, but that we expand it exponentially from what we did last year, where this time we can bring in some of those local young performers, some of our church groups, some of our other civic groups, just different community member groups to be a part of that tree lighting recording, and that it also be an invitation to something that we're playing with the name Candy Cane Lane that will happen in December, and that we'll be able to use pieces of that promotional virtual lighting leading up to the scaled back version of an event in December. So what we wanted to do is take what were the pieces of the tree lighting that we could replicate in a more scaled down version that people really enjoyed and that would still serve the purpose of the Christmas tree lighting. And so that's where we came up with this Christmas walk idea. And so the thought would be that we stay on Arundel Avenue, but as you've seen with like the art walks that have happened, there've been some bar crawls, but that we be very intentional of our streetscape that we have. We don't have to shut down any of our roads. We would work very closely with our police department about stationing officers at the intersections just to help coordinate pedestrians crossing in the crosswalks if necessary and to respond accordingly. But basically in front of the different businesses and in some of the public spaces that we own on these 2 blocks of Arundel Avenue, that we work with our civic group partners and partner them with different business owners or property owners to encourage that walkable street and have different activities and it be a very floating event. We can have music playing. We've got potentially, the tree would stay at the corner of Sycamore and Arundel. We would have Santa potentially on the fire truck where we could be socially distanced, but families could still have their photo with Santa in the parking lot there. And you keep going down and have different activities. We could potentially have a sing-along with Anna and Elsa.
Is that what the A's are standing for, activities?
Yes,
okay.
Sorry. And then we would also, encourage our restaurants to be open. At the tree lighting festival a couple years ago, you might remember Rosita came out and sold $1 hot tamales. So we would encourage, that from our restaurants downtown. We would also work with, hopefully our downtown coffee shop will be open and be able to do hot cocoa in the alley directly beside that. We also were working logistically to see how we could make it snow potentially, not the kind that we played with previously, but just give that ambiance of the holidays.
Like the bubble snow?
Yeah, like the fog. It's done with the fog machine. So we're working through what that could look like. And also, have a food truck. And we want to schedule it at a time that's obviously is going to be geared towards families. And it's going to be, we wanted to create something that if we're going to offer this scaled down version, this alternate event, that we create something that maybe it could grow and be something that we replicate in future years. Not to take place of the Christmas tree lighting, but just not to confuse our community with what we're trying to accomplish, but have something that maybe could turn out to be something really great and maybe could be replicated throughout the year for other types of events. From here, I'm happy to answer any questions. If this is something you like.
So what would the process be if, say, we moved the location of the Christmas tree this year?
Well, the town doesn't outright own that Christmas tree, so there were several partners that came together. And I believe it's the Women's Club and the Chamber that were a part of that. So I think that they would need to be brought to the table. I would love to see if there was a way we could work it into the alley, but I don't know that this year's the year for that. I don't know if there are other locations that you have in mind. I believe part of the town's part of purchasing that tree was with a streetscape grant specific for downtown. So I don't know what thoughts you have, but I know it's something we would be open to entertaining.
Well, I mean, there is lawn and space, say, just moving it to the Tryon Dentistry
Okay.
front lawn.
Okay.
And they have already expressed interest in wanting to do something for the Christmas season. And so that might be a way to kind of let another downtown business kind of host the Christmas tree for the year and make it something that, involves, more of these different partners that we've been working with.
So we'll definitely take that into consideration and see what the partners in the tree think.
That way it would still be downtown, but, other folks would have, kind of an investment opportunity in the actual event.
Yeah.
And do you have ideas for the different activities, or you've just identified possible activity locations?
Yeah, so we didn't get too deep into the weeds just because if you did not like this idea at all and we needed to go with Plan C, that we didn't waste so much time. But I think there's a lot of things, like you can make snow, you can make ornaments, you can make reindeer food, you can decorate Christmas trees, photo stations. I mean, there's just cookie giveaway. I mean, there's so many things that we could do. I mean, I would hope we've got some nice new retail businesses coming into downtown that they would come out on the sidewalk and actually have a sidewalk sale. We didn't get into too much detail because we also want to be very intentional that our nonprofit partners feel included and that we're not just dictating to them what they are going to do, but we'll have some options that we'll do and push forward, make available to them if they're not sure. But that's just the sense of what we could have. And you could also have many more. We don't know how many partners we'll get. And I hope we fill the entire streetscape.
So are there plans to scatter the farmers market vendors throughout the different sidewalk locations? Because I know we did that 2 years ago.
I mean, we could potentially do that. I don't. Some of our vendors can be very compact and some not so much. We are planning to, because we want the private businesses downtown to, we want to encourage them to make this theirs as well. And we want to encourage them to have something even after our event is potentially over, but the evening hours for your adults. And so our hope was to be able to talk with Brandon to see if the society room, if he'd be interested in doing one of his markets there that evening. And then our plan is to hold a holiday market that Saturday morning. So that way we can still have those two options, but we would really like for the private businesses that could have that impact to be able to do it.
The hamburger and drink icon, is that going to be a food truck?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll bring some of our smaller bistro tables from the alley, if we were to do this, down in front of Debnam's, and just kind of circle it around to create kind of like that outdoor restaurant vibe.
And then would someone from Public Works or Parks and Rec be tasked with making sure that once folks leave those bistro tables, they get wiped down?
Yeah, we'll definitely staff someone over there for this event to just keep things flowing.
And are you is there a plan to have it be like several food trucks, or are you just planning on maybe focusing on one food truck?
For this flow of an event, we really want to focus on our downtown restaurants and one food truck. And I hope that I'm blown away and there's a huge line. And if we decide to, replicate this in future years, we have to have multiple food trucks at multiple locations. But I think for right now, to make it worth our downtown restaurant, investment as well as, a food truck coming in, that one would be sufficient. But I mean, I could be wrong. We could do two.
And is there going to be electric available for the food trucks so that they don't have to run their generators?
Yes, so that's why we put this food truck here on Horton. One, to have something that would kind of bring you down Horton and connect you to Neo and Mythic Brewing, but also because we do, our electric meter and station has been installed there and
Okay.
is available to support a food truck.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
How are you going to manage the number of people?
Well, I mean, it's going to be very different. You're not closing the streets. You're not promoting live music. You don't have beer. So it's very different. We're not going to promote a festival. So it is definitely that kind of free-flowing art walk. So you just keep going. So typically, these types of events are, they kind of manage themselves in the sense of everybody kind of, you do this and you keep going. You're not necessarily going to stay for 2 hours. People may, but that's kind of the intent. It's just that very floating vibe.
Do you remember like 10 years ago, they had, maybe it wasn't quite 10 years ago, they had a downtown Christmas like walk where you actually went to the businesses and got your card stamped or whatever, like.
Right. I remember that.
That seemed to work quite nice.
That wasn't so crowded, that's
Yeah,
right.
no, so that might, I mean, like that lends me to think that something like this might actually work, without there being too much
Too many.
congestion.
Other questions with regards to this? So if the board is just, we're not going to vote on it, but in general agreement, you're going to try to nail down more specifics for us.
Yeah, we need to, we do need some direction in the sense of you want to do this or don't, because
Oh, yeah.
if you don't want to do this, then, we'll go to some alternatives. But if this is something you would like, we need to go ahead and start meeting with partners and businesses and getting everybody on board, because this is going to take a lot of coordination.
No, what I was generally headed for was just general consensus
Yeah.
as to whether
Yeah.
or not they wanted you to
Absolutely.
proceed and come back on
Yeah.
this plan, or, as you said, another plan.
Well, and I think another thing do you need me to come back with more information to make a decision?
Right. Are y'all in agreement for them to see what they can put together here? Everybody okay? I'm not asking for a motion or anything.
Yeah. Well, I guess I need some clarity on what exactly you're saying, because I don't necessarily want to go to our partners and all the downtown businesses if this isn't a plan that we want to move forward with.
Okay, what I'm hearing is that they're okay with this plan, but we still need to see more specifics, and so we can put a price tag to it. But the general consensus, and y'all jump on me if you think I'm misstating it, is to move forward with this plan.
Now, how many vendors do you expect to have? Is this the red marks? Is that all you're going to have? So they
Those are
crisscross?
activities, not vendors. Those
Okay,
are
well then,
activity
I
stations.
mean, I'm just wondering if you're going to get too much.
Yeah.
I mean, I
so-
like this idea. I just don't want you to overcrowd it.
Yeah, so we on the street are not gonna do like market vendors or craft vendors. We're just gonna do like the civic
Things
group
for the
activities,
people.
Come in, it'll be very quick and you keep moving.
Okay.
So that's the intent of what we're gonna do, is just keep you moving, introduce you to the businesses, the civic groups, and keep going. As far as a price tag, Amy could probably give me a ballpark really quick, but I would say, it's gonna be minimal at the end of the day compared to what we did. I don't know that, if you want me to, it would just slow us down, but I could ballpark, we're not gonna, I'd be shocked if we spent $3,000 on this. And that's including like marketing. I don't see us spending much more than that, yes.
And what type of music, or where would it be located? Are you thinking
have it.
DJ type thing, or?
So we'll do light music, kind of, where Anna and Elsa could potentially be in the alley. And our hope is to be able to work with the different churches, where they can, in very small groups, but kind of separate, and it'd be like a caroling type thing along the sidewalk in like different stations. So we want it to be very community driven, and less about the big entertainment.
I think if you got a DJ, a good DJ,
That's what kind of music.
you could get the crowd stoked up,
Yeah,
just like a live band would.
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what DJs cost these days, but that's what I'd always had in my mind, come down from a live band
Yeah,
to a DJ.
yeah. Would y'all like me to move forward, or do you want more information?
I asked them and they said yes.
Yeah, but I asked for clarification, just because I wasn't quite sure.
I
I
don't know
just
what
want to be upfront.
clarification you need, Sheila. They've said
Okay.
that they like what you presented. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would just love for you to be able to ask the Chamber of Commerce and the Women's Club what their thoughts are as far as moving it, because I do think that we could get, some of our other business, community partners would love to host, as well as probably even defray some of the cost of the actual event.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, besides that, I think that this is a good scaled back plan for us.
But the idea is to move forward with what you presented here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay? Anything else? Okay, capital project.
What kind of music?
Fire.
All right, good evening. You'll recall last week the ordinance to establish a capital project fund for the fire station was on the regular meeting, and it was pulled for further discussion. So we're available for any questions anybody may have on it right now.
I think that the question, and y'all please correct me if I'm wrong, was not land acquisition or the engineering work. It was going ahead and designating fund for the fire station design. And what I have heard from the board is that they would like to go back and discuss that at a retreat. So that's what I'm hearing. The other two that I mentioned, I don't think the board has a problem with. Now, I'm not trying to put words in their mouth. That's just what I've heard from them. So y'all jump in. Tell me what you want.
Yeah, I think we have to have more discussion about a fire station and/or substations, and in what order we would do them. Because the way it was, the consent agenda was presented, we were leaping forward with a location, $150,000 for design, and we had never really agreed to do the building anywhere yet.
So I understand, Bob, that time is of the essence on two of these. Is that correct?
Well,
Or was that just on the leaf truck?
the leaf truck mainly. The only thing, this was approved at the August meeting. The only problem was there was a typo in the land acquisition amount. That's why it was brought back last week. If you wanted to, we could adjust the ordinance and remove the design part for right now if you wanted to. We did the transfer from the general fund. That's a separate ordinance that was approved. This is just the ordinance that would establish the capital project fund.
Okay. So,
It's not approving any design work, design contracts or anything yet. This is just approving the funds that have been transferred from the general fund to this capital project fund. That's all it's doing right
so
now.
let me help you out just a little bit the way I understand it. If we approve the design funds, they are not, that's not authorization to spend those funds, even though it says so in here.
It's just budgeting the funds. It's not awarding any contracts yet.
Right. So that could be, those funds could be applied to another central station moving up here, or it could be to adding substations.
Possibly. Yeah, this is just establishing the fund. It can be, any changes can be made in the future at the board's discretion at that point. But like I said, this is not awarding any contracts or beginning any design work yet. This is just appropriating the funds.
Okay, I don't know, it seems to me that the concern is that y'all felt that it might be designating it for
A specific location.
specific location, and that's not what you wanted to happen at this time. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
So what's the best way to protect that?
I don't
Well-
see where there's any problem with, I mean, if this is just,
Say that again,
appropriate.
Beverly, I'm
This
sorry.
is just appropriating, and it can be changed at any time. So we can still have the time to get together and discuss location and all that and design.
Well, that's what I said a minute ago, and people didn't feel comfortable with it. I thought, I understand what
That's,
you're saying.
well, that's how I
That was where I was headed. It was not specific, appropriated to any one particular project.
Could the ordinance be reworded?
Well, the simple thing to do
Better
is
than nothing. No.
just take it out at this time and leave it in there the way it is. Because what you've done is corrected the land value. That's what you were trying to do.
Right.
So basically, you could leave it as it is in the budget,
Because
which
we've
is
already
basically
budgeted
what
for
this
It's already-
does, right?
yeah, we've already- It's just a
I think we
correction.
need to talk about it later on.
Because we've already put forth that money in the budget, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so this was just to do what, set up a specific line item for it, Bobby?
So this is to establish a separate fund. Typically for a larger multi-year project, there's what's called a capital project fund. And what we did was move the money from the general fund to this capital project fund. We did that at the August meeting.
Right.
We did basically transferring out general fund to capital project fund. We also, at the time, intended to do this, the same ordinance, but it was out of balance because of a typo. So that's why we're bringing it back
Okay.
to correct the
But
error.
either way,
We need to talk
it's
about
it's not committing funds for the design of a station. It's committing funds, but it's not,
Budgeting them, but not committing them.
right, commit is the word,
Right.
not budget. Are y'all
it.
comfortable
We
with
need to
that?
talk about this later on.
I am.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. All right, look, I'm seeing head shaking all around that everybody's comfortable with that. That all this does is corrects a thing on land acquisition, was it, Bob?
Yes, correct. It was, I think it was 640-some thousand was
Okay.
the one that
So-
was adopted, which was, it was
Okay, so the
thing
concern
was out of
that you
balance.
have about fire station design, this doesn't move that forward or allow it to move forward until we say it can. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, is time of the essence on this, or are we okay?
It would be nice to go ahead and do it, but
I
it's
didn't
not
ask if
as
it was
of the
nice,
essence
is it
as the
necessary?
other. We can wait till next week. I
Okay,
mean,
I would rather hold this for a regular meeting,
okay.
because that's the standard procedures
Yeah.
for this. So, does anybody else have any questions or concerns on this? All right, thank you for bearing with us. All right, lease purchase award.
Yes. This one is more of the essence. I did contact Truist, who was the recommended lender, and they were willing to extend the rate proposal through October 4th. That is about 10 days from now. What that means is the loan will need to be closed by October 4th, not that it's approved by the board by October 4th. So tonight would be great if we could go ahead and do that, so we could get the ball rolling on the documents and get them.
Okay, so time is of the essence on this one, and
Correct.
I understand that. What I want to hear from the board, do you want to move forward with it?
Did you find out the information that was asked at the
Yes.
meeting?
I believe correct me if I missed any of these, programming to add, first of all, to add or separate out the charges, like let's say solid waste and then a yard waste fee or whatever we wanted to call it. They can't do it mid-year, they said, which we're mid-year, because that's requires system structural changes, and it's not just a value change. And then also they would need a 6-month runway after they receive the official go from us. If we said December 1st, okay, we want to do this, we want to change the structure of this on our bill, we could do it by like next July, basically. That would be the first time we could do it. The cost to bill, I mentioned, I think they would probably charge us an additional fee to add a new charge and collect it and bill it. They said right now it'd still be 84 cents, but would likely increase in the future. The 84 cents is the current solid waste fee that they charge.
Is it going to increase regardless of whether or not we have that verbiage in there?
Not
Or
that we
it's
know
not
of.
going to increase unless we have verbiage letting folks know what that money is being used for?
Not that we know of yet. They did a study, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know how often they'll do it again. But that study said, okay, we're not charging enough to recover our costs internally. That's why they did the increase. And I don't know when that would be done again on everything, but they said that it would likely increase if we were to do separate out this fee, like we're talking about.
Okay,
Does that answer the question?
sort of.
That's the best they can give.
Okay.
Well, I think what Shannon really wants, and jump on me if I misstated, is you would like for the public to know why this came along the way it did, why this $3.25 is there, especially when it said $3 in the budget and it ended
I'm
up-
sorry, Chris, you were shaking your head. Was there something that the mayor misspoke when?
I know, but it's $3.25 is what it comes out because Raleigh's charging the
He
quarter.
said $3.
I know that, but what she was concerned with was that the general public might not know that, and we needed to explain.
Yeah, they're just seeing an additional $3.25.
Yeah.
And
I
that
know
that was
you
my
don't get that,
concern.
Chris, I understand that. But on the bill, it comes out 3 1/4. You wanted the general public to understand that, is that right?
Right, and I do realize, like was said at the last meeting, that folks could read the budget to find that out. That's true. But it was also super difficult for me to find everything within the budget. And so I think that it's a courtesy, since we're asking folks for this additional, what winds up being $3.25, even though we're only getting $3 of it. Although from what I understand, we're actually getting less than $3, right, Bobby?
Well, we're getting about $3 of it. It went from 50 to 84 cents. So we try to compensate for that increase in that yard waste fee that we added in. So
Okay, so are we getting $3 per month that's going towards the truck, or is it less than $3 per month that we are realizing that's going towards the truck?
I guess it'd be about $2.91. $2.91.
Okay,
How much you said it'd be?
$2.91.
$2.91.
Here's where I was headed, and Lisa's probably the one to answer this. Could we do like a budget note on our website that took you to something that explained this? So if people go to the website, it might say budget note, and you click, you go in, and it explains it. How hard would that be?
That's not hard at all. We can update the website to do the breakdown of what the charges are for, and we could possibly put them in various places so that people could see them and know what the cost is.
I think that would be super wonderful, just
It's
so that
probably
we're
the best we can
being
do right now and
transparent.
the cheapest we can do.
Yeah, and that's not going to cost us much at all, just a little bit of time. And then there's also, and Chris, you probably know the answer, but you might know the answer as well, Bobby, that this is going to be on for the 5-year period that it takes for us to pay off the truck.
Correct. That's the plan, yeah.
And then it will drop back down 325
Well, I
or
mean,
perhaps,
Well,
By then, it probably won't.
probably won't be
Okay,
325.
all right, so.
I just wanna have
For the
that
life of this, for the life of this leaf truck, for instance, the annual debt service payment's a little over $44,000. We anticipate the fee will generate about $110,000, $120,000
per year.
per year. So the plan is to, when equipment gets older, you cycle it out. So the plan is to put the additional into reserves for future purchases.
Okay,
Let's say the leaf truck, I don't know, is it a 08 or what? A 08, when it's cycled out, we'll have some funds built up in reserves for the overage to buy the next leaf truck.
okay. But each year that's gonna, and I don't have that in front of me. 355, am I making that up?
215, I think it is.
I,
215,000.
313 is what I'm looking at.
Oh, that's the combined total payments for the payloader and the leaf truck
Okay.
over the life of the 5 payments, yeah. So what I did when I said the annual payment on the leaf truck was $44,000, that's separating out the leaf truck from the payloader.
Okay. Well, I wasn't clear. I just looked down and,
Yeah, so the payloader's about 18,000 a year.
Okay.
roughly.
so with those two, it's going to be 315 or 313 is the total price?
Yeah, well, yeah, including interest, the 5 total payments including interest is about $313,700.
So 313, and that includes the interest. Okay, so technically, with what we're bringing in at the $120,000 a year, we could have this paid off in 3 years.
We could.
Is there a prepayment penalty if we budget for the payloader and the leaf truck will allow us to take some time off of that 5-year loan? I just want to make sure that I'm understanding exactly what it is we're talking about.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, what that would mean would be retooling the plan for the reserves for the future.
I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh.
Can you either move the,
What I was saying, that would require retooling our plan for building the reserves up for the purchase of the next leaf truck. But we can,
but we would still be building, but then we would, like, if we were to pay it off in 3 years, we would be putting into reserve that full $120,000 a year for the next truck, right?
right.
Okay.
other questions? All right, in this case, we need a motion.
Do you just say I
would
move
accept-
to move forward with?
A motion,
Let's see, it would be a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-04.
Okay, then I move to adopt Resolution 2022-04.
second.
Motion made and second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our business for the evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
To adjourn.